Strictly Jazz Sounds. We step into a world where music grows out on forests, silence, community, and memory. My guest is violinist and composer Jenny Scheinman, an artist whose work refuses easy categories and whose sound carries the texture of landscapes as much as tradition. Before the stages, recordings and collaborations with artists like Bill Frisell, Jason Moran, and Brian Blade, Jenny was growing up on an off-the-grid homestead in rural Humboldt County, California, surrounded by redwoods, wildlife, handmade living, and acoustic music shared within family walls. In that environment, listening wasn't just musical. It was survival, awareness, and connection. That sense of deep listening still shapes her approach today. Hi, I'm Steve Browngen. In this conversation, Jenny Scheinman and I explore how the quiet of nature informed her improvisational voice, why lyricism matters more to her than virtuosity, and how influences as varied as Ludwig van Beethoven, the Beatles, Thelonious Monk, and Miles Davis helped shape her musical imagination. We also dive deeply into her remarkable double album, All Species Parade, a project inspired by a local biodiversity parade and transformed into something larger, a meditation on coexistence, ecology, indigenous history, and collective humanity. Jenny talks about composing for multiple guitar voices with Frisell, Julian Lage, and Nels Cline, channeling the spirit of Ornette Coleman in the opening piece, Go Home, and creating a suite honoring the Wiyot tribe. Along the way, we talk about jazz not simply as a genre, but as a model for society, one built on listening, trust, individuality, and shared purpose. There are stories of wildlife encounters, transcendent performances, and a look ahead to her upcoming crowd-funded project, Stars of the Lower Deck. The music on today's episode of Strictly Jazz Sounds generously comes via Royal Potato Family. Yes, the label has that name. Odd, but it has its own story, which we don't have enough time to share with you right now. The music on this show is from Jenny Scheinman's album, All Species Parade. The quintet plays throughout the album. That includes Jenny Scheinman on violin, Bill Frisell on guitar, Carmen Stoff on piano, Tony Scherer on bass, and Kenny Wallison on the drums. You'll also hear Nels Cline and Julian Lage. This is a conversation about music, but also about place, about identity, ecology, and the power of community. Stay with us. This is Strictly Jazz Sounds, conversations that let the music breathe. I'm Steve Browngen. This is Steve Browngan, and you're checking out Strictly Jazz Sounds. A guest with me today is Jenny Scheinman, violinist supreme extraordinaire. And you'll find out if you don't know who she is. And I'm going to learn a lot about her today as well. Jenny, thank you for joining with me.
Thank you for that glorious introduction.
If we walked into your home where you grew up as a child, what kind of music would we hear? What would we be listening to? Or perhaps around in your neighborhood, if there was such thing as a neighborhood, since you were in Humboldt County.
I grew up on a homestead in a very rural part of the Pacific Northwest. All of the parcels of land there were about 250 acres. That's many city blocks. And they were pretty undeveloped. They had been ranch land previously, and previous to that had not really very long previous to that had been inhabited by the native population here. My parents are New Yorkers that were part of the Back to the Land movement. And after going through medical school and being part of the civil rights movement, they moved up to Humboldt County when I was 2 and built a kind of funky little shack on this piece of land. And for the first part of my life, you would not have heard any recorded music because we didn't have electricity. You would have heard my father playing guitar, playing folk music. He knows a million songs, and I learned a lot of my music from him. And you might have heard my mom playing a little pump organ, which she had in the teepee shack thing that we lived in. Later on in my childhood, once we got electricity, you would have heard maybe the Pastoral Symphony blasting if my mother had put it on, or you would have heard Blue or Thelonious Monk, or let's see, The Band or the Beatles coming over the stereo. You might have also still heard my dad playing because he really preferred to play than listen. And once he learned a tune, he just played guitar and sang. And we had a piano. We always had a piano at the house. And I played piano from when I was about 5 years old. Started violin when I was 7, and all my siblings played as well, though they didn't have such a happy time with it. It was more of the enforced parent practice time. So you probably would have heard me do it partly because I loved it, partly because I didn't have to do the dishes if I played piano. And I would have been playing out of the Suzuki book or maybe one of the Beethoven sonatas on piano. And I would have been playing likewise, probably out of the Suzuki book or some fiddle tunes on violin. And if you caught me when I was a teenager, you would have heard me playing along with the kind of blue albums and the jazz albums that my dad bought when he was a teenager growing up in New York City, visiting the Village Vanguard with his dad and the other jazz clubs of New York City.
Wow, that range is amazing. It really is. That
Mm-hmm.
was really clear. And the mindset was there, wasn't it? You were in a different place. You were living in a different place, and your parents were there in a different time. Tell me, how did that affect you in how you listen to music?
You know how it's different to listen to music in different environments. If you listen to the Pastoral Symphony and you look out the window to the Pacific Ocean and two mountains framing a river mouth flowing out into the ocean, it sounds a certain way. Same thing if you listen to A Portrait in Jazz, Bill Evans, and you look out the window and Taylor Peak shrouded in mist. That sounds different than when you listen to it and you look out your window and you see the brick of the neighboring apartment building, or you listen to it on your earbuds when you're on the subway. And it just brings out different things. I think one of the things I did get growing up in the country was a very immersive sense of beauty, natural beauty. And there's a certain structure to that that probably informed my music. And when I was had melodies swimming around in my head, walking down the trail to the county road, those things mixed and informed each other. And there was a different kind of noise. There was the noise of birds and animals, and there was a lot of quiet. And I lived there till I was 16, and I didn't live there the entire time. We left and went down to the Bay Area and went up to the college town of Arcata in Humboldt County. So I wasn't there continually, but it was definitely the foundation of my basic sense of the world as a child, which was very beautiful. It involved a lot of manual labor, it involved a lot of acoustic music, and not a lot of interference from pop culture.
Yeah, I can understand that. The type of music that surrounds you and gets inspired by your surroundings, living in the country like that, grows on you over time. And that serves as a foundation. And it's your foundation. And when you began to step into jazz, what from that did you bring to jazz?
I think I brought the exploratory nature of jazz, the way jazz responds to its environment in an intuitive and spontaneous way. I think the complexity of jazz was very appealing to me. The ambition of trying to stay within harmonic forms and tell a story was appealing. And also the community element of it. I think jazz is one of the best examples of what chamber music tries to do, which is have a group of people together communicating and listening in a very ideal format. And growing up in a family within a small town that was trying to create a community was something that informed my sort of performance practice and interacting with a band.
Jazz is about community, community in music. And you found yourself surrounded by that. Now, in the hills of Humboldt, surely that was a different place, as you mentioned about it, with San Francisco, the Bay Area, and of course, as you said about New York. How do you bring those two together? Because you clearly do that. How do you bring those two together?
We write out of all the things that have built us. We write from the sounds of our childhood, and it's an intuitive process. I'm not entirely sure how I bring those things together. My most recent album, All Species Parade, is a celebration of nature and all species past and present. It's very much a biodiversity album. And I think I had the revelation when writing it and touring it that, in fact, jazz is not inherently an urban sound, and the elements that make jazz special, which are the adaptability and the mutual support and the community balance, are things that exist very much in the natural environment. And it made sense to employ those to celebrate and write music and celebrate nature. But that's all very heady stuff. How it actually all came together, I'm not sure. It probably came together through listening to a lot of albums that were made in Harlem and listening and going back to New York with my family and walking the streets.
I can definitely hear that element in there. Another thing, though, that I want to ask, and I'm not going to say it makes me puzzled, but when I've listened to the range, and I'll admit I haven't listened to all of it, it's a lot of music that you've been involved in. But when I listen to quite a range of it, it's really clear to me, and I'm asking if you feel the same way, but that you have a way of not defining yourself in terms of a genre.
I try to play music that is as authentic and honest as I can. I wasn't formed in a specific genre. I was formed by a father who played Hank Williams and the Beatles and old swing tunes. and my mom who played Chopin on the piano. And I think a lot of people are like that. It's not, we start to think our childhoods are totally unusual. And then you look at the details and you realize that everybody's childhoods have these unpredictable characters and sprinklings of influences that one might, that are stranger than fiction. And I also have, in a way, been a apprentice to Bill Frisell for a lot of my life, the wonderful jazz guitar player Bill Frisell. I've been in his bands for over 20 years, and he's somebody that, like I think maybe you're suggesting, isn't very easily categorized in a genre, and yet he sounds very American, and the melodies that go into his music are informed as much by Wayne Shorter as they are by Hank Williams or the Carter family. And I think that influenced me, and also that was something that drew him to me, that I had that similar kind of fundamental aesthetic or foundation.
I like the word that you use, inform. And I have not had anybody describe their listening influence in that way. And it says so much to me that it speaks to you, and it has spoken to you over all these many years. So I'm going to try to stay with that term. Whenever I listen to other violinists, Stefan Grappelli, Regina Carter, even Jean-Luc Ponty was very different in his style. And Stefan Grappelli did a whole lot to boost modern violin sound. How can I ask this question? First of all, you do definitely defy that label as Bill does, Bill Frisell. And the influence of Bill is very strong with you, as I think actually your style is with him. You two have quite a relationship, and it shows so much that you both defy and have created your own culture, your own style. We can call it Americana, we can call it folk, we can call it jazz folk, we can call it all kinds of things. But there's a style there that sets you two apart from, I think, any other pairing in music that I have found.
Yeah, I one of the ways of listening to different soloists is to think about what they're trying to do. And very often, I think in my solos, and probably in some of Bill's solos as well, is that we're very like lyrical. I don't mean that as a compliment. I just mean that we're thinking like a singer, like a lyricist. And if you listen to Stefan Grappelli, he's not thinking, he's thinking of patterns and polyrhythms and ways of just whipping up the energy and or the harmony and playing over that, or other maybe more jazzy soloists are. I remember recording once with Cohen,
Mm-hmm.
and I took this solo that
Clarinetist
was,
and not Cohen, yeah.
yeah, clarinetist and not Cohen. And I took a solo that was fast and went all up and down the range of the violin, but to me sounded like it didn't really say that much. And I said, guys, I got to do that solo again. That was a bunch of nonsense. And Anat said, isn't that what jazz is? And it made me realize I somehow developed this criteria for what is a valuable contribution on recordings. That's arbitrary. And my criteria is there content that's being shared that means something to a human? Is there content that has a narrative, a melodic, some sort of motifs or narrative or storyline, in the same way that a singer would say something with their song? And Anat was saying, hey, we can also just dance with this stuff and play a bunch of notes and play them in good time. And it doesn't have to say anything, it can just bubble around in there. And that's perfectly valid. That may be maybe an insight into the difference between my jazzy solo that I was critiquing and the kind of solos that I put on my records, which are a little bit more a narrative, lyrical.
The one album that really caught my attention was Live at Yoshi's.
Oh, wow, that's an old one. Yeah.
I was really caught by that. Yoshi's, to my listeners, is a club in San Francisco in the Bay Area, very noted club, and has attracted jazz musicians worldwide. And obviously, as somebody from California, it attracted you. When when you're playing with somebody like Jason Moran, Brian Blade, or even Nels Cline, to Robbie Folks, what kind of energy or values draw you toward collaborators such as these people and the many others that you have been a part of?
All of those characters have a wildness to them and an exploratory nature, and they're constantly revealing new things, looking for new things, and also creating textures and worlds. They're world builders, worlds that I want to explore, worlds that I can thread my generally single line stories through. They're very visionary in terms of sound and texture, and they're brave, they're courageous in terms of trying new things on the spot, and they're explorers, I guess. And they also all really appreciate beauty and the simplicity of a good melody.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. I think there is also something else. And there's, I think for a lot of improvisers, they see community as they're talking to each other. Herbie Hancock likes to talk about that, particularly in relation to Jazz Appreciation Week, Jazz Appreciation Month, as he's talking to people about jazz. What do we get out of jazz? What's the thing that we like about jazz? Do you think improvisation can, and as Herbie sees it, serve as a model for society, like a way of being together?
Absolutely. I think that's what's so exciting about it. People interacting, relationships played out in sound on the stage. And one of the things that all music can do that is unlike almost anything else is give the listener the opportunity to hear distinct voices, multiple distinct voices at the same time. And with language, with if you're listening to somebody talk, usually you can only hear one person at any single time, one or maybe two. With music, you can hear harmony. You can hear the harmony of community on stage, the harmony of a group of people creating one sound. And that, I think, really lights people up and gives people a sense of hope and excitement that is super special and keeps people paying the ticket price and coming back.
And boy, do we need that today. Not the ticket price, but the hope. We need the hope. In your collaboration style, do you see it as adapting your voice, or do you see it as discovering a new one each time? Your voice with Jason Moran is different than it is with Bill Frisell or even Robbie Folks.
Yeah. There's when you hang out with somebody, you think different thoughts. Yeah, say you're on two separate days, you're asked the same question by two different people, you're going to answer it differently and in a different tone. And you might add a little joke to one person because they're just prodding you that way. And that is something that I'm not entirely in control of. When I play, you've mentioned Robbie Folks in here. When I play with Robbie Folks, I am very much more in a specific country genre. And so there's parts of that make me play a certain way. The solos are much shorter. I have to stay out of the way of the lyric. He's very funny, so there's always an opportunity to make a joke in what I'm doing. And I'm interpreting or enhancing and supporting the lyric, which are often not, they're not always funny. There's all sorts of, he's written a lot of music and there's quite a lot of variety in there. But say if I'm playing with Jason Moran, which I haven't done in a while, and I so appreciate that album that I made with him and the concerts that I did with him. I saw a photo recently of us playing duo at La Poisson Rouge and was reminded that he came to that concert and brought an ebow, like a thing that sustains the note. Usually you use it on a guitar, but I didn't know that he'd brought it. And we started the first tune and he took that out of his pocket and he put it on the string and he just lifted up his hands. He wasn't even touching the piano with his hands, and sustained a drone note while I played over it. Total surprise, totally fun to be put on the spot to respond to something I had not been expecting at all. And all those other players you've mentioned bring different things and surprising things to the table. Some that I'm expecting because I know they're playing so well. Very often things that I wouldn't have thought of in a million years.
So Brian Blade is one of my favorite people, let alone drummers. Let's talk about the album, All Species Parade. I love that title. Um, Feels like it's inviting us to listen beyond the human. When did that idea first take hold of you?
I moved back to California over a decade ago and definitely wanted to do an album celebrating this area, celebrating the beauty of this area or the community of this area, something about this area. I have two albums as a vocalist, and on both of those albums, there are a number of original songs that talk about the community here, or the characters here, or the landscape here. And my first thought was the obvious thought, which was, oh, I'll do another vocal album and I'll tell some stories about the characters here. That album has begun to materialize, but before I got to writing the finishing it, these songs started emerging, many of which I wrote during the pandemic when I was grounded here and really immersed in the outdoor spaces of Humboldt County, and had that revelation I mentioned earlier, which was that in fact, jazz can be a way of expressing a reverence for nature. And I was playing a lot with a couple musicians from San Francisco that had come up during the shutdown and were camped out outside. And we started workshopping material and talking a lot about how improvisation, chord changes and chord structures can glorify can glorify nature. Anyway, over the course of a couple of years, my thoughts shifted from doing an album of country tunes about my local community to doing a more expansive instrumental album, a jazz album, to dive into the broader landscape of this area. And that became All Species Parade. The title comes from an actual parade that happens here and has been happening for over 40, maybe closing in on 50 years around here, in which community members dress up like different species, very often very obscure species. There'll be like a 12-foot nudibranch walking around the plaza of the of Arcata in the middle of this parade. And it is to celebrate biodiversity, and it's just a great parade. And I just thought, diversity has been something that we've been talking about as a culture for in recent times, diversity of ethnic diversity, racial diversity, thought diversity, gender diversity. And I wanted to honor that, but also expand it into species diversity and the diversity of the planet. And so that is how I got into the ideas of the album. the pieces themselves, I wanted to do some sort of it's a double album, so it's magnified in that way. And there's in the middle of it, there's side two, I believe, is a suite, the All Species Parade suite, which starts with a tune that is dedicated to the native people around here who thought of themselves as caretakers of the earth. The second one is a pure improvisation, somewhat inspired by the interludes in Duke Ellington suites, and it's called The Sea Also Rises. And the last one is this sort of hypnotic, groovy, long piece called All Species Parade, which I take a solo on, but very much a kind of interactive solo with the rest of the band. So we create a groove trance web to sit with the beauty and interlocking nature of nature.
The tribe that you are referring to, is that the
Yeah.
Wyatt tribe?
There are quite a lot of tribes around here. It was an area, there were a lot of little tribes, but the Wiyot is the tribe that had occupied and lived in the area that I now live, which is the college town of Humboldt County, Arcata. So they live and lived prior to white settlement around the Humboldt Bay.
Yeah, I identified with you quite a bit in that in Wisconsin, where I moved to in 1974. Wisconsin is home to one of the largest number of federally recognized tribes in the nation. I'm in Columbus, Ohio now. People here have very little knowledge of that, just living in that mindset and the mindset of the native people, the indigenous peoples of this country, of this land, and what they have to go through. And as they watch the utter destruction of their most sacred parts of what makes them a people,
Mm-hmm.
their commitment to Mother Nature, their commitment to the land, the waters, the sky, and All Species Parade speaks to that, does it not?
It does. Yeah. It speaks to caretakers of the earth all over the country and a reverence for the place we live. It's bioregional, as in honoring the place where you're from, the place where you live, the give and take of humans and their environment.
Do you think this album is as much about storytelling as it is about activism, or is it something more intuitive than that?
I feel really lucky to be in a career that is by nature activism. Listening is active. Playing shows, traveling around and promoting this album and celebrating this album brought communities together to listen to one thing together. And that is a form of activism without saying anything at all about politics or being specific about my views or the views of the band. I was able to talk a lot about All Species Parade and what that means to me when I was on the road, which was fun because it is about communities and it is about gratitude for the places that we live. And I was traveling around to a lot of different places. And so I got to really celebrate different communities in their areas. But I am so inspired, and one of the things that keeps me playing is to talk to audience members after shows and hear about their days, hear about all the rad, amazing things they're doing in their communities, and how much going out to see music re-inspires them and re-energizes them for the things they're doing. I was down in Bakersfield for 5 days teaching and performing at a community college, and Dolores Huerta, Cesar Chavez's partner and mother of his children and incredible activist, came to our show, and she talked about going out to hear jazz during all those years of the labor movement, and how all of the activists would go and just refuel at these shows, and to be part of that tradition of to take that role in the movement of providing music and inspiration to people that are actually doing the work is really heartening and keeps me at it.
There are three distinctly different guitar voices on this album. They're fantastic, but you utilize them with the deftness of a classical composer on this. The way that you have singled them out, combined them, it works so well. It's when one woman I'm listening to Julian Lage, another one's Bill Frisell, and then Nels Cline just comes right in. It's so well done, Jenny.
I credit them. I gave a little bit of instruction. I think of them as players that overlap in their aesthetic and their playing, but I gave them different roles. Most obviously, I asked Julian to play acoustic guitar and gave him some inspirations like the acoustic playing of John McLaughlin on the Shakti albums, or a little bit of Django Reinhardt, or just the word rhapsodic playing. I just wanted him to be all the filigree and tendrils and expansiveness of the natural world. And I wanted Bill to be the larger environment, the sky and the enveloping world. And Nels comes in on a couple tunes and is just pure energy.
As Nels is.
Yeah.
It's the way he plays, that's what he does. He's a powerful force, and Bill is more subtle. And I can see how you mixed him in like that. And but both of you have that really long standing relationship, that partnership, and combined force. You anchor the whole thing and let everybody loose. The opening composition, Ornette Goes Home. That caught me off guard. I was expecting something that was more Ornette Coleman like. What did you want to do with this? What was it that you were after with this?
The story of the title of that tune is the idea of Ornette going home to Fort Worth. And I wrote it during the shutdown, so everybody was shut down, and a lot of people went home, left New York City and went home to
Yes.
wherever their home was, sometimes rural places or uncosmopolitan places. And the fantasy was of Ornette going back to Fort Worth and recognizing, hearing the accent and the sound of his youth and recognizing that was still in him. We revert or we recognize these strains that are foundational to our mature artistry. That's a tune that at shows we often start with, and I start the album with it. And it's just a fun tune for every player in the band to introduce themselves, and everybody gets a solo. One of the things I really wanted in the All Species Parade album was to, as you say, let the players loose. There's some 10-minute songs. I wanted everybody to have the freedom to say everything they wanted to say and not sculpt it like I have some of my other albums where I was more focused on every note being part of the architecture. This
It
one
was
I wanted expansiveness.
it works. You can tell that you have instilled in them an opportunity to stretch. That there are parts of this, I think, what was that? I think it was House of Flowers. It was meditative, had this meditative thing going on that for me, and I just closed my eyes and I let it come in and go for a little bit. Let's talk about the title cut, the title track, the soundscapes that are created on this composition. What are you looking for with that?
There's the eternal groove, the groove that goes on for an eternity, the groove that was always there and will always be there. And then there's this mesh of harmony and texture that's created by all the guitars and the violin that lays over that and keeps evolving and adapting and growing. And then there's the melody, which is like a bird flying through, and then there's me dancing over it as a soloist.
I think you accomplished that. It dances. You've almost feel like you're looking down at everybody else playing. There was another piece that really got me was Nocturne for 2020. It blew me away. I think you hear something different for Julian Lage in the tracks that he plays on the album. You mentioned about this, but it's acoustic guitar. How many times do we actually hear Julian on acoustic? Because you don't hear that in jazz.
Yeah, I absolutely love his acoustic playing. And I ran into a luthier that's making a guitar for Julian Lage, who happens to live in Arcata, California. And I ran into him at the grocery store recently. And we were talking about building the guitar and what he's aiming for. And he said, Julian told me that he wants the guitar to feel like it's about to explode in his hands. And on that track, there's moments where I really thought the guitar was going to splinter into a million pieces. He's just pushing it. And I really love the sound that you can get on an acoustic guitar of the visceral quality of a pick on a string. You actually feel the physicality of it in a way that you often don't on an electric guitar. And that was an essential part of the All Species Parade album is the tactile quality. And that a lot is in Julian's playing and his contribution to the sound.
And Shut Down Stomp. Shut Down Stomp. What? That was when I heard that, and I says, "Oh, that's got to be about 1920." That
Yeah.
was a good stride.
I've just recorded a new album that's going
Oh,
to be out
great.
in the fall, tentatively called Stars of the Lower Deck. And it does look back about 100 years to when my grandmother was traipsing around Europe in the 20s and 30s. And it's got a little bit of shutdown stomp in it.
No kidding. Emmett Cohen really likes ragtime. He likes stride piano. He incorporates that. He
Hmm.
writes modern day stride,
Yeah, I love
and
it.
yeah, I don't think there's anybody that I've seen him do it as successfully as he's doing it now. Was there a moment during making this album that it surprised you in any way? It has so much engulfed in it, where it felt like it had its own agency.
That happens every time I'm making an album. This album, All Species Parade, was a joy to make. They're not all a joy to make. Sometimes there's a lot of struggle in it, but this album, I called people about a month before the recording session. Everyone was available. It flowed. I booked the ticket. We got in the studio. We had 2.5 days. We played and we played, and it just sounded good. And we were so happy to be together. Man, the Cape was a ball. That's the surf tune. We were all dancing in the studio. It was moving to see just everyone together in a room,
Oh,
you
it
know?
really moves. This thing just oh yeah, this has got some rhythm, folks. I'm telling you, if you haven't listened to this yet, pick that one out. That's a good one. And why don't you describe? Could you describe that recording session more? Because the more I hear about it, the more it sounds like there was so much more that went into it than other sessions that you've done.
We got together late afternoon of the first day. Julian and Bill and I went into a little separate room and rehearsed a little bit. We got into this studio and we just pressed record and we started playing. It's a double album. So there's 70 something minutes of music on the whole thing. No, is it 90? Let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8. I think it's about 20 minutes aside. So anyway, it's a lot of music. One of the things that wasn't released as part of the recession were these pieces that we did every night. And at some point I'll release them or I'll redo them or I'll produce them, but it was something called the 4-bar blues. And it's a
Oh,
piece I wrote that is 4 bars long and it's a blues. Ba da 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 da. Da,
sweet.
da, da, da. Da, 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 da. That's it. And then there's another little part that goes da, 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 That's it. That's the whole tune. But check this out. It lasts an hour long, four
Oh, get out
bars,
of
and it
town,
lasts an
really?
hour long. So both of the nights of the session, we did a version of that tune. And that was really fun. We just dug into it and stayed there for an hour.
Okay, I'll look for that, or you let me
I don't
know
know
when
when that'll be
it's
out. That
ready.
might be an experiential thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
geez.
But
Okay.
who knows? Maybe we'll release it. But
Uh,
we had the liberty, the recording session was going so well, we had the liberty to just hang out. And the 4 bar blues is hanging out in something for a while. And it was just my treat to myself and to everyone to not worry about the recording and just to play.
yeah. Do you feel talking about your ecological self, your environmental self? Do you feel responsibility as an artist to respond to ecological or social crisis, or does that naturally come through your work?
I think I have feel a responsibility to uplift, and that's something I take more seriously as I get older.
I
I
bet.
think my earlier albums and my earlier sense of what it was to be an artist had more to do with self expression. Now it has more to do with uplifting and helping others that may come through having or being in the process of raising a couple kids, working in schools, recognizing how powerful that the music can be as a tool to uplift and feeling a responsibility to employ that and not
Mhm.
necessarily just make it about me. And in terms of responding to the environment, we are. When we're in a room with an audience, we're responding to the environment. In terms of, I have strong political views, and I grew up in a family of activists, and I have made a choice to use music to emotionally uplift and bring people together. And in my way of doing that is not to be too specific politically. And because I feel like, at least with my skill set, I can be more effective through just providing the environment for discussion and
Not to be
providing
too
the,
preachy.
not to be too preachy. It's difficult to create good art with specific agenda. I think harnessing the subconscious is maybe an easier way to get to the stuff that really unleashes people's energy and inspiration.
Do you think that music has taught you more about listening and listening to other people's perspective?
Yeah, I do feel like being in a band, listening to each other is practice listening to anybody, and it's practice listening. And we do have to practice listening. It's not something that we're necessarily good at just straight out of the what, womb? Is that where we're out of?
That's where I think we're still in it, but
Yeah,
we're being born over and over again in new experiences in our lives.
I like that.
And, and with each experience, you learn from it if you want. And I think this is something that people have to do is to will themselves to be open to that experience.
Yeah.
And I put it that way because we can tell ourselves, I don't want to learn about that. I don't want to understand that. And we have too much of that going on right now. And music has a way of opening that up a little bit. What do you think?
Of opening up, keeping people open to listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you hope people feel or understand after hearing you live?
I hope they feel, as you said, opened up. I hope they get a little practice listening to multiphonic voices. I hope they are moved to tears. I hope they are, I hope there's humor in it. There's always got to be some humor in it. I hope people hear the humor in the All Species Parade album. That's music is a powerful tool. Comedy is an equally powerful tool. That feeling of erupting in laughter or erupting in amusement. I hope people have a good time. I hope they leave thinking, yeah, I live here.
Yeah, that's good. I've got a real important question to ask here. How
Oh
was the
no.
name Royal Potato Family acquired for the name of the label that released a number of your albums? And Allison Miller's, who was a drummer who was fantastic. And I know you two are close cohorts.
I have no idea. It's some sort of little personal anecdote of the owner of the label, Royal Potato Family. But I like it, right?
Yeah,
It makes me laugh, makes me smile.
I did right away as soon as I saw that name. I've got some of Allison's work, but it's on it's digital. When you have digital, you don't stare at it like you do if you have something tangible to hold on to it. You
Yeah.
know, it's like the vinyl. And when you're looking at vinyl, you're checking everything out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a couple of Allison's albums, and I didn't realize that's what she's recorded it on.
Royal Potato Family.
Royal
Yeah.
Potato Family. So,
Yeah.
is it sweet potato? Is it?
Are they russets? Are they
Are they?
golden?
That's what I wanted to know.
You're a Wisconsin man. You're a potato man, right?
Uh, yeah, I like
Mhm.
potatoes. Okay. Corn.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite memorable encounter with wildlife in Humboldt that stayed with you musically?
Here's one. This isn't wildlife. I thought of two things when you asked that. One is that we had a mountain lion living in our orchard. And
Whoa.
one day I was by myself at about 7 years old walking up the driveway, and I saw a billowing steam coming across the fence. And I walked over to it just out of curiosity, looked down and saw a deer with its leg torn off and billowing
Whoa.
steam coming out. And right when I recognized what it was, I heard the most incredible low growl I've ever heard. Lifted my eyes up and made eye contact with a mountain lion that was probably 5 feet away from me. There's one. The other
Oh.
one isn't wildlife. It's that I grew up riding horses and I rode horses to school, to and from school, my whole childhood. And if there's anything that's given me a sense of rhythm, it's probably those hooves on the county road.
Oh, I bet. Oh, yeah. Tunes that you would start putting together as you listen to it?
Yeah, definitely. Those tempos. A lot of music for centuries was based on the tempos of horse hooves.
Oh, I
You
can see
know,
that.
that was now it's also based on walking tempos. The rhythms of our bodies are in music, and the rhythms of horse hooves got into my body and ears and imagination from an early age.
Oh, that's a great story. I'm going to close with this. I saw your name on a recording by the Rova Saxophone Quartet, Coltrane Electric Ascension. For fans who do not know about John Coltrane, Ascension, it was the album that he recorded, released after A Love Supreme. It was to turn a lot of people's heads. It was a moment where he brought the musicians together in a circle and he started it off with one note, one chord, and everybody joined in after that. And that was the recording. And I saw clips of the 2012 performance at Guelph University. And that's pretty heavy company that you were keeping there. Going from what we do know to that, which is not easy listening music, is it? How was that for you to do that And what was your role in that?
One of the things about those Rova performances is that there were always two of every instrument. And I got to play with my friend Carla Kilstead, and
Yes.
that was a blast. We've had a long relationship as a team. When we both lived in the Bay Area, we'd be hired as a team. And it had been many years since we'd done that. So that was really fun to be there with her. And immersive. I don't know if that's good to listen to, but it sure is good to play. Is it fun to watch somebody surf? Is it fun to watch somebody swim? It's sure fun to do it. And it reenacts it. If nothing else, it's a reenactment and it's an enactment of immersive energy and beauty and chaos. And it was really fun.
Was that spiritual for you, like it was supposedly for John Coltrane and his cast of
Yes,
characters?
lost myself in it. The death of the ego.
Yeah, yeah. Quite an amazing opportunity. Not too many people got that. So, what you had mentioned before that you have something coming up, you have a new recording, and why don't you repeat that? And then, what else should listeners keep their eyes and ears open for?
So I have this new recording. I crowdfunded for it. Thank you, everyone, for helping me make it. These things are expensive. And as we all know, musicians aren't making as much money on the sales of their recordings anymore. So I really appreciate everyone that helped me fund this recording. It is with the All Species Paraders. It's with the same people, Carmen Staff, Tony Scher, Kenny Wollison, Bill Frisell, Julian Lage. Nels Cline is not on this one. I promised Royal Potato Family that I would not make a double album. I made one album, and it's called Stars of the Lower Deck. It is inspired by my grandmother and all the musicians that have continued to play and perform through really difficult times and continued to inspire people during times of rising authoritarianism. It's going to be out most likely in the fall, possibly in the winter. And yeah, it's a continuation of All Species Parade. It's a continuation of that band. We had so much fun on the road. I had to do another album, and I'm really excited about this one. And I I may be coming to Columbus in November. I know you're based in Columbus, but we'll be performing up and down the West and East Coasts in early 2027. And we also have some stuff in November in the Midwest.
Great.
So that's something to look forward to.
Oh, excellent. I look forward to meeting you and checking out your music.
Fantastic.
Jenny, this has been fun.
Great. Thank you so much.
You can find Jenny Scheinman's latest recording online and on CD. Jenny may appear in your community someday, especially if Bill Frisell appears at or near you. I urge you to check her out. And Bill too, while you're at it. So, you really want to know how the music label Royal Potato Family came to be? If enough people ask, I'll post it on my website, but for a small fee, yet to be determined. The theme music for Strictly Jazz Sounds is by Johannes Wallman. It's from McCoy, which can be found on his album Precarious Towers. Folks, Jazz Festival season is in full bloom, and it's already cooking. Support live jazz wherever you are. Because musicians make much less with record sales, live performances are critical to their livelihood. So go out and dig their music live. Thanks for listening to this podcast. I know you have many choices, and you selected this one to which to spend time. I really appreciate it. Pass it on and share your enthusiasm for this show. Subscribe if you haven't already. You'll be one of the first ones to know whenever a new show, photos, or the top 20 of the year or other information is posted. All right, be cool. This has been Strictly Jazz Sounds, conversations that let the music breathe. I'm Steve Brown again.